In this video, I'm going to take famous and iconic events in American history and recreate them with Lego bricks starting back in the 1700s and going all the way up until today. So strap in, boys and girls, and let the challenge begin. We're gonna start off over 200 years ago in the year 1776 with this guy, George Washington. He didn't lie to his mom when he chopped down a cherry tree because he couldn't tell a lie. And also, he was the commander of the Continental Army, which was created to fight British people by Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson, who one day got uncomfortable when he was writing the Declaration of Independence, and because he is so epic, invented the swivel chair, which you might be sitting on right now. A lot of these guys are on the money we use every day and came up with some great ideas, like the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that was all written down in the Declaration of Independence, which was written to the British because they wanted to declare independence from them. But the British weren't super happy about that, so they had to fight a Revolutionary War, which had a lot of epic battles, but I wanted to build the Delaware River crossing. So I took 2 base plates and a bunch of blue studs to create the river effect, and had some of the boats loaded with different soldiers, including George Washington. After a few more battles, the United States became a country, with its first president being George Washington. And guess whose mom was there when Washington became president? And not only that, the national bird was declared to be the bald eagle, even though Benjamin Franklin wanted it to be a turkey. People were very excited because the United States was starting to take shape, and the first White House was just built. This is the one where John Adams would live. And after Adams was president, Jefferson decided he didn't really like Adams as president and challenged him to an election. And guess what? He won. He was made an offer he couldn't refuse by Le French to buy a lot of land called the Louisiana Purchase. And to explore the land he just bought, he sent Lewis and Clark to discover things that were out there, including dinosaurs. I'd like to mention they didn't find the dinosaurs. Sorry, Thomas Jefferson. And they were guided by the courageous Sacagawea. The boys discovered all types of new plants and animals, and while they were traversing the land in their horse-drawn carriage, they ran into a brand new animal, the grizzly bear. And a couple of presidents later, Abraham Lincoln was elected, and half the country tried to leave. Hey, you can't do that. Yes we can. A big reason for the war was slavery, and because President Lincoln declared slaves free in the Emancipation Proclamation, it made winning the war much more important. And with the help of former slaves like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, the United States Army was able to free the slaves and beat the traitors. Another important figure at this time was Booker T. Washington. He built schools brick by brick to help teach former slaves how to read and write. And only a couple days after the war, Abraham Lincoln attended a theater to celebrate and was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. Overall, this was a very difficult time for the United States, but it was so important because it showed that we would fight for what is right. Next, I'm going to build the Industrial Revolution, which was a big change because machines were invented to help make people's lives easier and to help connect people faster. Like this thing, which is a steamboat, which was invented in 1807 in Delaware and used to travel the oceans. In 1876, we got the typewriter, which made it so you don't need to write everything by hand, and also in 1876 was the first ever phone invented by Alexander Graham Bell. I tried to build an accurate model of what one would look like, and these are the first ever words said on a phone. Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you. One of the biggest inventors of this time was Thomas Edison, who was the Elon Musk of the 1800s. He invented the light bulb, which was one of his early bright ideas. He also invented the phonograph, which was the first ever version of a DVD player. But his best invention is the movie camera, and he's the reason you're able to watch this video right now. And in 1908, Henry Ford created the Model T. The reason this was a big deal was because instead of building it like I did, one person at a time, he created the assembly line, which allowed almost everyone to buy a car. Now these may seem like a lot of cool inventions, but we were just getting started. And other countries around the world were starting to recognize us, because in 1884, Le French guy came back to give us a Statue of Liberty. Now this one might be kind of small, but we're not even halfway there yet. Because in 1903, these brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, built the first ever working airplane. I am so gonna try to recapture this using Lego, so let's build. Alright, this looks pretty legit, but will it fly? Yeah, and the flight only lasted about 14 seconds. And also around this time, John D. Rockefeller became the world's first billionaire because of his big oil business. Prohibition also existed at this time, meaning people couldn't legally drink alcohol. And that created a criminal underworld of mafia bosses like Al Capone to come in and do a bunch more illegal things. And because of this, speakeasies were set up, which were made so that the mafia could hide the alcohol and the bars from the government. And so that way everyone could kind of chill and maybe murder a guy. This is also part of why the FBI was invented, to crack down on these guys.
FBI, open up!
And the year 1928 is when Mickey Mouse was invented by Walt Disney. And it's also when Calvin Coolidge was president. Now with all that going on, America is about to experience another difficult era with the World Wars. These were some of the biggest battles to ever happen and really made America into a superpower who could take on the world's biggest bad guys. Like in World War I, when fighter pilot Frank Luke shot down tons of different German planes. And since Germany was so upset about losing the war, they launched another one across the world again. But America didn't get involved until a bombing by Japan in 1941, and America sent its troops everywhere. Like in the Battle of North Africa in 1940, where we used lots of tanks and motorcycles for the first time. There was also the Battle of the Atlantic, which started in 1939, and one of the biggest battles of all was D-Day in 1944. This one was huge because it used transport ships to drop soldiers off on a beach where there were lots of defenses and bunkers that took out war tanks like this one. There were also planes in the sky, and this is one of the most complicated battles to ever happen in a war. But it wasn't the last battle because they still had to fight the Battle of the Bulge, which was Germany's last real defense, and finally the liberation of Germany within the city of Berlin. There was a lot of really dirty fighting in the cities, but the German leadership was finally defeated in 1945, and the war was finally ended by Oppenheimer when this thing, the atom bomb, the biggest explosive known to man, was dropped.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
After the war, it was a great time to be alive. People were doing well and everyone was having babies. Television was also becoming popular, making some of the first big celebrities, like Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, and the Beatles. Also one of the most famous presidents ever, John F. Kennedy. This era was known for its bright colors and shiny cars, like this Lego Corvette, which I'm gonna build right now. Yo, can you imagine pulling up to the function in this? This is awesome. Are they using bananas for the fenders? Also around this time, a man named Martin Luther King Jr. set out to fight for civil rights and had a huge impact on people being treated equally. Also at the same time, we were focused on fighting communism, which was responsible for the deaths of millions and ran against all the values of freedom and democracy that Americans cared about. It was why Americans fought in Korea and Vietnam, and it was scary because it was the first ever war where nukes were on the table. And if you remember the atom bombs, these are like 10 times bigger. This war never fired a single bullet and lasted through 9 presidencies. And one part of how it was fought was the space race to prove that we could beat them, which made us able to do one of the coolest things America has, send a man to the moon for the first time. And this is by far one of my favorite points in history, so you know I'm gonna build this. So let's recreate the moon landing. So this was the lunar lander, which was the first ship to land on the moon with Buzz Aldrin, Mike Collins, and Neil Armstrong.
All steps for man. One giant leap for mankind.
And Neil was the first ever man to walk on the moon, while Buzz was second and in charge of taking some pretty great photos. And while they were having fun on the moon, Mike had to stay inside. Comment bruh for Mike. I also recreated this famous photo of everyone who ever lived except for Mike Collins. And you thought that was a big invention because a lot more got invented in America at this time. Like in Florida in 1971, where Disney World was first built. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to put the happiest place on earth near so many alligators. Or Star Wars, which was released in 1977. Or in 1983, the first ever McDonald's McNuggets came out, and the same year the internet came out, making it easier to connect to people online and watch cat videos. And around this time, a bunch more famous people cropped up, like Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Michael J. Fox, and Mike Tyson. That's a lot of Mikes.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And in 1992, the Soviet Union collapsed, meaning America won the Cold War and it was officially the most powerful country in the world. Then we went into the 2000s, which was a new century and a ton of cool stuff happened. The prequels came out.
Hello there.
The iPhone was invented by Steve Jobs. Bitcoin was created for the first time. Drones are all over the place. And Amazon, the shipping service, became big. And this cool guy Elon Musk came along and he's currently building spaceships to try and get to Mars, as well as the Cybertruck, which is this really new modern car. And you know, what a pimped out car. And it has to be one of the most hype, goofiest looking trucks I have personally ever seen. Then the year 2020 happened, and it was chaotic. There was a big global pandemic and a big presidential election. YouTube became big, and Mr. Beast became the most watched man on earth. A lot of people forget why America is so great and what it's been capable of when it's put to the test. We fought a revolution under the idea that all men are created equal under God, created some of the coolest machines ever seen on earth. Then we went to overseas to fight the greatest evils the earth had ever seen, came back home and sent men to the moon. And we're just getting started because we always come out ahead, especially when the times get rough. And every fact in this video was 100% true, so comment W America if you learned something or show it to your history teacher. With all that said, God bless and stay awesome.